to get all cleaned up and put away.
Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome back, or welcome for the first time. Either way, my name is Caleb, and like always, hopefully you guys can hear me okay. It looks like the microphone's working, I hope. Welcome. Happy Friday. It looks like we have a few people who are already here, so thanks for being here, everybody. We got some people from YouTube and from Facebook, so that's great. Whichever one you are streaming from, if you could take a minute to say hi, let me know what's going on in your life. I'd love to chat with you about today's topic and anything else that's going on. So if you have questions about the world of special needs, regional center, IHSS, whatever it may be, let us know. That's what these are all things that we talk about every single week. And so if you're not new here, you already know, but if you are, welcome, and I'd love to get to know you guys. All right, let's see here. I like the white. We're gonna go white up in the corner today, the little Galt symbol. Thank you, Teresa, for always having these things on deck and ready to use. We've got an interesting topic. So it's that time again. Really, we're actually kind of late. Normally, this question that comes up, IHSS sick pay, excuse me. So this is a question that we actually get a lot. I'd say normally around like April, May, and June, because the rollover period is in July. So a lot of people talk about that and have questions about it on Facebook. And so we wanted to address today some of the kind of the basics of IHSS paid sick leave, what you should know, and how you should maybe go about claiming it if you ever need it. And so yes, to those who aren't aware, there is IHSS sick pay if you have IHSS. And so like always, let's take a moment for some people to log on before we really jump into the topic. So if you, while we wait, if you have a question or something you want to say, or if you just want to say what's up, let me know. Drop a comment. You can also share and like the stream, tag a support group, tag a friend who may benefit from hearing some of this information today. My favorite part is not even about what I talk about in these lives. It's about what you guys share in the comments. So there's a lot of times where we may not have the full picture of something and you guys clarify for us, which is great. So if you have knowledge on this topic, if you have experience using sick pay, let us know your experience, because there's definitely a little bit of a controversial aspect of this that I want to address, and I want to hear your thoughts. And that's in regards to claiming sick time pay while also claiming your IHSS regular hours. We're going to talk about that a little bit. Excuse me. And so like I said, if you could take a moment to share, like the stream, tag a friend, tag a support group, that really helps us with getting more people in the stream. More people in the stream means more dialogue, more information, right? And so Christy, hello. I am well, thank you. How are you? Let me know what's going on in your life, Christy. And again, for those of you who don't know, if you're just kind of coming across Galt Advocacy or this stream, we talk all things special needs, okay? So we're a special needs advocacy group, and one of our favorite topics is IHSS, which we are talking about today. Mr. and Ms. R, hello. I had my hearing on April 1st this year and still haven't gotten a decision. What's your advice? Okay, so if you're referring to IHSS, an IHSS hearing, for those of you who don't know, it's a miserable world right now in the IHSS appeals world. So state hearings is super slow, super backed up. And so they're taking months to make decisions right now. And it's really not cool. It's not cool at all, because it used to be where the judges were held to a bit of a higher standard, where they needed to make a decision within 30 to 60 days of a hearing actually being held. And so we're not seeing that right now. We talked about that a little bit, I think, like last week or the week before with the Dakota. Last week it was with Vinaya. So I think it was a couple of weeks ago now with Dakota. And it's not cool. And so unfortunately, you are in a position where a lot of people are. I am hopeful that you'll get a decision soon. You can always follow up with the state to see if there is a decision that should be releasing soon, if they have any status updates for you. But right now it seems as though almost everybody is waiting, like way past their due date. It's really, really frustrating. But thank you for the question. Thank you for the comment. Glad you're here. Miss Tonya, hi, I referred a client to you guys for an appeal for PS. She's in good hands. Thank you. I'd love to chat with her, whoever that may be, if I've spoken to them already or not. But thank you, Miss Tonya. All right, so we got a good chunk of people here. We'll go ahead and just jump into our topic. You're still more than welcome to drop a comment, either related to this topic or not related. I will do my best, like always, to get to your questions, okay? Thank you. All right, IHSS paid sick leave. And so forgive me, I will be looking away here and there on the camera just because I do have some notes that I've taken to kind of stay on point today, okay? All right. Let's see here. Everybody can still see me okay, right? Yep, cool. All right, so just a quick introduction to IHSS. If you don't know, which you should, if you're here watching our stream, I assume you're probably not super new, or maybe you Googled something like IHSS and our information popped up. But if you don't know, IHSS is a benefit of Medi-Cal. And so you're good, don't worry about it. Dad, you're good, you're fine, don't worry about it. And so IHSS is a benefit of Medi-Cal. And so Medi-Cal here in California allows you to get IHSS, which is a paid caregiving service. And so if you are caring for somebody with special needs or a disability of some sort, and again, a lot of the people we work with are parents who have kiddos with autism or Down syndrome or something of that nature. IHSS is a program here in place that allows them to have a paid caregiver to help them with things that are not typically you'd have for a child, right? Whatever the medical need is or behavioral concern, right? And so you as the parent can be that paid caregiver. That's IHSS in a nutshell. And so that's important because we're talking about sick pay, right? So sick leave, sick pay, this is something that you typically get when you are working a job, right? Well, being an IHSS care provider is a job. You are signing up to be a caregiver with this program. Whether it be for your child or your loved one, you could also be a paid caregiver for an elderly neighbor of yours, or again, maybe you just love being a caregiver. That's a passion of yours and you want to work for IHSS. There are people who have IHSS that need caregivers, they need workers, and so you can sign up to be theirs. But you are, again, applying for a position, not applying, you are signing up for this position. And so if you are caring for a loved one or a child with special needs, you are essentially working for them in a way, right? That's kind of how that works. And so, with that said, you are entitled to certain things. You're entitled to sick pay. You're entitled to some time off. You're entitled to benefits like medical and stuff. You're entitled to, oh my gosh, I had another thought. What was I saying? You're entitled to what else? Sick leave, I guess. Anyways, so you're entitled to a lot of these things just like a regular, typical job, W-2 job, right? So how sick pay works. So from my research that I've gathered, and again, if anyone hears something that I say that you've heard differently, please let me know, because again, we're all learning together. But based on my research, it looks like sick pay actually hasn't even been a thing forever with IHSS. I think it might have been rolled out back in 2018 from what we've gathered. And so July 1st in 2018, any active IHSS providers were given the opportunity to take sick pay, sick leave if they needed to. And yes, even if you work for your child, if you are caring for your child as their paid provider, you still are entitled to sick leave, excuse me. This applies to active providers with IHSS as well as WPCS. So WPCS is another program. It's the Waiver Personal Care Services. It's similar to IHSS, but it offers a little bit of a different tasks and stuff like that. And I'm sorry, I had the comments covered. I think you guys have a couple of questions here. Oh, there was one question from Desiree. Excuse me. If caseworker doesn't reach out for a reassessment, it's already been 3 years. 3 years, our hours were okay, same, no changes. Should I leave it like that or contact IHSS? My son is under called Advocacy. Well, hi, Desiree. That's shocking. 3 years is a long time. And so I would say contact us before your social worker. So reach out to our office. You can get connected with an advocate who may be assigned to your case currently, or with Christina, who runs our annual reassessment families that we work with. But connect with us. So we want to talk with you a little bit about what's going on, because that's a long time. And so we want to help you there. So connect with us, please. All right. Okay, so like I said, you must be a current and active IHSS provider. So if you are signed up as a provider, but you're not working or claiming hours for somebody right now, you are not considered an active provider, right? So you have to have a recipient that you are currently working with. And so how you get sick pay, so not everybody is entitled to sick pay automatically. It is somewhat earned. You have to accrue sick pay, and there is a cap on it, which we'll talk about as well. But to my understanding from what I've gathered so far is you have to work a minimum of 100 hours of IHSS services before you start to accrue sick pay. So before you actually get sick pay, you have to claim about 100 hours, which for some people, again, that could be a few weeks, that could be a month, that could be a few months. But so far, from what I've gathered, it doesn't look like they automatically give you sick pay. I think you have to accrue it up to 100 hours, and then from there, you'll start accruing sick pay. Now, let me know in the comments if anybody has had a different experience with that. So if you have had less hours and you got sick pay right away, I'm curious to hear that, because I was trying to do some research on that and it was a little unclear, but that was the information I got. And so 100 hours first, once you've claimed that and you've been established IHSS provider, then it seems as though they'll start accruing sick pay for you on your pay stubs. After you accrue annual sick leave hours, you as the provider must work an extra 200 hours providing IHSS services or be actively working for 60 calendar days from the date of accrual. These are one-time requirements per fiscal year. So in order for time to continue to accrue and for you to keep those hours, you have to work a certain amount of hours or for a certain amount of period of time, right? So it's either 200 hours of IHSS services that you're providing for somebody. And again, if you have protected supervision with your client, that's a month's worth of work. That could be 3 weeks worth of work, right? So you could be okay there. But the other is 60 calendar days, which also allows you to accrue time from that date. If I'm reading this correctly, that's what I gathered. So the fiscal year, by the way, so these hours that you get from IHSS, to my understanding, it caps at about 40 hours. So as over time, when you start accruing this time, it'll cap off at about 40 hours of paid leave for sick. And so I haven't heard anybody going above that. If you've gone above that before, or if you gathered more, please let me know how you did that. Because to my understanding, you will be capped at 40 hours. And this is the part of the conversation that gets a little controversial. Okay, so let me know your thoughts, because I'm really curious to hear it from everybody. But they say that these hours don't carry over into the new year. So the fiscal year for when these hours accrue and stop is from July to July, or July to July, right? June 30th, I'm sorry. So it's July 1st to June 30th or whatever. And so that means that if you haven't used any of your sick time pay and it's June 30th, you're just a few days away from July, then you're not going to get, those hours aren't going to carry over and you automatically get 40 more new hours. It will be capped, right? So those hours don't carry over. So what we have seen a lot of people do is a lot of people will encourage you to claim those hours on top of your IHSS hours because you're going to lose them. Now, that is not, from what I've gathered, how you're supposed to do it. So because this is technically a regular job, you are entitled to that sick leave if you are sick, if you are needing that time off, right? So if you are planning on claiming those hours and claiming your regular IHSS hours, that means you're getting an extra bump in your paycheck that month, right? Which ethically, morally, on paper, I don't believe you're allowed to do that. But I do know that seems to be a big discussion amongst other, Facebook groups, amongst other people that I've worked with. And so let me know if you have thoughts on that. Because to my understanding, I don't believe that that's how it's supposed to work. But let me know. Correct me if I'm wrong. And so just know that you get those 40 hours for that year over the course of that year, and they won't roll over. So you either use them or you don't use them. But you're supposed to use them when you are sick, according to the rules that I've gathered from, right? So anyways, how are we doing so far, everybody? Let me know if you've got any more questions. This outlines pretty quick, this topic today, paid sick leave. And so I'm trying to give you as many details as I can to kind of maximize our time today, because I'll be logging off around 12:45 like normal. One thing I did want to mention too is actually how do you go about doing your sick time, right? So this one was a little confusing to me because technically you're supposed to request the timesheets. You're supposed to request you're supposed to basically put it in a request in order to fill out sick leave. And so I guess it makes sense because you actually can do this ahead of time. So anyways, there is a form that you can fill out. It's called the SOC 2302. that is a sick leave request form. So if you are getting sick and you know you're going to be out for a few days, or you're going to have somebody else working for your child or your loved one there during that time period, you can fill out that form. You can even look it up online. These SOC documents that we talk about all the time with IHSS, they're all online. You can look them up. And so you can fill this form out and you can send it to your social worker or the county. You can also do this electronically. So in your timesheet portal, there is a section for you to click request paid sick leave timesheet. And so that allows you to fill out basically the same information, but electronically. So just something to do there. And the electronic time portal is the ESP portal that you get as a paid provider with this program. All right, Ramissa. My dyslexia there, my goodness. Marissa, excuse me. When you submit your timesheets, there is a separate entry for sick leave. Yep. Yes, you can use it if you have a doctor appointment or a family emergency, as well as being sick. Thank you. Yes. So that was actually another point. I'm glad you clarified that, because it does specify in the rules for IHSS for sick leave, you don't have to actually say why you're taking a sick day. So if you need that sick day for any of those reasons that Marissa just said, that's perfectly fine. You don't actually have to be sick, like she said. And to my understanding, there's also bereavement time too. So family emergency, again, a family, a loss in the family, whatever, and things like that. So something to consider and take into account. Marissa, thank you so much for that. That is powerful stuff. Deadlines do apply. That was something that I gathered, but I couldn't get any other information about what deadlines are when it comes to these timesheets. I think they're just saying that you have to submit it before the next pay period. So let me know if you've ever been like dinged or something for submitting a sick leave like past the pay period, like retroactively. Let me know if you've ever done that. Christy, you said, I've never done that. I go straight to the claim. What do you mean by that? I missed something. You go straight to the claim. Tanya, you said, my PS appeal is pending review 8/25, but county came for an annual 9/25 and approved PS. Wow, hold up, congratulations. Due date for the judge is 9/22, but I got 2 NOAs approving PS, one dated 9/22 and another dated 10/1. Is the county basically awarding PS because they believe the judge will side with me? So very interesting. So this happens a lot, especially right now, because of how much time the judges are taking to make these dang decisions. So yes, it is very possible for you to spend many months through the appeal process, and then what do you know, it's time for your annual assessment, right? Which is exactly what happened to Miss Tanya. And so the judges, just to be clear, the judges do not have a way. I mean, I'm sure they could, but the judges don't base their decisions on what's happening now at the assessment level. So once you have your hearing and that's done, they're referring to the notes in the recording of the hearing. They're referring to the evidence you presented, and the social worker presented, right? And they're basing their decision off of that. So they're not going to base their decision whether or not you're having an assessment right around the corner or not. However, we have seen social workers sort of do the opposite. So we have seen social workers say, oh, well, you're still waiting on a judge's decision. You know what? I'm not feeling well. Let's schedule your assessment out next month. Knowing they're like, okay, we should get a judge's decision by that point. And if they deny protect supervision, right? I'm not going to say any more on that front, but you're probably getting what I'm saying. So in this scenario, that's a good sign. You're absolutely right, Tanya. So this is a good sign that the social workers came in and that they granted protect supervision moving forward. However, no, it does not give you a guarantee or even really much of an idea on what the judge's decision is going to be. So if the judge comes out and denies protect supervision, then it will deny it for the previous year's assessment. But because this year's assessment grants it moving forward, you will have it moving forward. If the judge grants it, if you get that decision back and they grant it, the judge will mention how far back they will pay you protective supervision. So if the effective date is 6 months earlier from today, back in March or whenever, then you will be paid retroactively going back to March. Oh, Christy, you said no SOC for sick. You just claim the hours. Okay, so yeah, again, for those, I think that the form was probably made back when they used to have like paper timesheets. Because like right now, I don't even think they technically accept paper timesheets anymore. Let me know if anybody still does paper timesheets. Because I think they rolled out some rules or whatever to make it to where you're not supposed to do paper timesheets anymore. But I think that's maybe why they had it on paper, that SOC form. But you're right. So if you have the timesheet portal, if you have access to that and you're claiming the hours electronically, there is a way in that portal for you just to go ahead and claim the request and claim the sick time within your IHSS portal, just like Christy is saying. So good job. Brittany is referring to Tanya. Thank you for mentioning this. Congratulations. Yes, everybody congratulate Miss Tanya. Give her a thumbs up. That's a big win. Protect supervision can be very difficult to get approved. And Ms. Tanya had to go through an appeal process, which is not fun at all. If you've never done it, it's just not a great experience usually. And so congratulations, Ms. Tanya. I'm really happy that the social worker ruled in favor of protect supervision. If that's something that your child or your loved one needs, that is fantastic. Jeanette, claiming sick leave as a live-in provider, the hours I would have worked can just sprinkle them into the other days. So is your question, can you, instead of like not claiming those hours, but sprinkle them in between the sick pay, like around the sick pay so that there's no hours left unclaimed? Is that what you're asking? Claiming sick leave as a live-in provider, the hours I would have worked, can I just sprinkle them into my other days? So Jeanette, I will say, you can do whatever you feel is right. Right now, again, live-in providers and out-of-home providers, I do think are held to different expectations, different rule, not necessarily different rule. I mean, I guess there are some rules, but I think it can make sense that if you are technically sick and you're still working your hours for IHSS because there's no other available provider, that to me makes sense, where you can maybe sprinkle in your hours. Now, again, I'm not telling you to do that because, again, the rules on this are a little flimsy. There's still not really any set regulations that I've found that says you can't do that. But I don't know. I'd say do what you've done. You can even consult with your social worker about it. I know that's like a crazy thing for me to say. Consult with your social worker about it, but you can. If you get information from your social worker, especially in writing about something, then you can follow that, even if technically it's not exactly true, because it's not your responsibility to know it's true. Well, I guess that's not true. I'm saying things here, guys. You should know what's true. It is technically not it's not an expectation for you to know everything there is to know about the rules, but there is an expectation for you to do a little bit of research before something happens. And so with this sick leave conversation, I do think it's important to consult with your caseworker, your social worker, if you are questioning when you can claim it. I am telling you just kind of some of the rules that come from the rule book, but that's about it. Brittany, it's a really huge win. This currently headed towards a hearing with Galt, and the process is a lot. As you already know, yeah, the hearings world is nuts. And I hear a lot of people talk about how they had a miserable assessment, their social worker was super rude, and they didn't feel prepared, but now they want to get prepared for the hearing. I have to say, in order for you to get prepared for a hearing, you have to be prepared for your assessment, because these judges can be very difficult to work with, and sometimes more difficult than the social workers. And so the appeals world is not meant to be a friendly one. It's not meant to, be about, again, what's doing right or justice. It's about what are the facts that we have here, right? So if you know that your loved one qualifies for something like protective supervision, that in itself is not enough to get protective supervision. You have to have facts. You have to have evidence, cold hard facts and evidence for a judge to make a ruling in favor of protective supervision. Jenny, you said, sorry, I just tuned in. Well, still, welcome. Glad you're here. You didn't tune in too late. What was your other question? You said claiming, you were the one that wrote claiming sick leave as a provider, work the hours, can I sprinkle them in? Yeah, okay. So again, I talked briefly earlier about how It's a little fuzzy because technically this is sick time, which means you're supposed to use it in lieu of your regular hours. But if you are a live-in provider, you make a very good point. Again, I wanted this to be a little bit of a dialogue between everybody because it still is a little unclear because people do this. They do use the sick pay hours on top of their regular hours. The IHSS has seen this. It's not a new thing. And so if we're talking about opinions here, I think it can make sense in some ways if you are a live-in provider. So no, it's a great point, Janet. I'm glad you're here. Even though you tuned in late, I'll forgive you somehow. I'll have to figure out how, but I'm just kidding. Brittany says, us parents don't usually get real sick days. I feel that. I understand. Oh, and you were clarifying. You said you're heading towards a hearing. Yes, I understood what you meant. Jasmine, can I still be denied PS if I have proof of a doctor and school IEP? I have an appeal coming up. I'm so nervous. First off, you are totally fair. It's totally fair to be nervous. It's definitely nerve-wracking, I will say. I don't want to like blow it out of proportion. And so the IHSS appeal, just so you're aware, the hearing that you have with the judge, these are what we call informal administrative law hearings with administrative law judges. So it is meant to be more of a conversation rather than like a judge hitting the hammer, the what is it, the galvet? I forget what it's called, and saying, order in the court, I object. It's nothing like that. You're not gonna have a lawyer on the other side yelling, she's crazy, I object. It's nothing like that. It's pretty casual. And so if you're doing a phone conference call hearing, the judge will get you on the line and the judge will talk to you the same way I'm talking to you. And they'll say, hey, what's going on? Why are we here? Right? And so the judges know that if you're not a lawyer, if you're not an advocate, if you're not a social worker, and you're just a parent advocating for your own child, or you're a loved one caregiving for your loved one, then they know that they're not gonna try and ask you trick questions. They're not gonna try and necessarily like treat you the same way. They're gonna know that you're not necessarily an expert in the regulations of protect supervision. But that does not mean they're gonna go easy on you. That's a different. I will say that if you don't know something about the rules, that does not give you a right to still pursue protect supervision. And I promise I'm going to answer your question in itself. But there's a saying that says ignorance. What does it say? Ignorance is not a reason. I forget the saying. My point is to say that if you are unaware of a regulation that maybe goes against the need of why this child may qualify, just because you don't know about it doesn't mean that it's enough of a reason to like move forward, if that makes sense. And so that's what I mean by judges won't go easy on you necessarily. They're going to be firm but fair, hopefully, right? But to answer your question, can it still be denied if you have proof from the doctor or you have proof in the IEP? The answer is yes. The answer is yes, you still can get denied because there's a couple of factors with these judges' decisions. So one of them is like the merits of the case and jurisdiction and merits, right? Do you have the right to appeal this? If you do, what is your evidence, right? That's the merit side of it. And so the judge has to weigh out, they have to weigh out the merits. They have to weigh out certain things. One thing is your testimony. The next thing is your evidence. The other side of it is the social worker's testimony, the county's testimony, and their evidence and their position, right? And so the judge, although may see the doctor's form and may see the IEP, and it totally is aligned with the regulations of protect supervision, there is one more factor that comes into play, and that's the judge's opinion, right? So here's everything else, the evidence, the testimony, the documentation you've worked really hard on, but on top of all that is the judge's opinion. And I say that because all of the regulations surrounding protective supervision specifically are subjective. Not all of them, but a lot of them are very subjective. So that leaves room for a judge to interpret these documents that you consider proof and evidence for the need of protect supervision. And so it really does depend. Of course, there's like irrefutable evidence and information, right? If you have a case with no gray area, which is rare, because again, the rules of protect supervision, a lot of it is gray, and it's meant to be that way because they want it to be not just inside this box. They want lots of different people to qualify if they need it, right? And so, So depending on what your IEP says, depending on what the doctor says, you could have like a really clear case that really helps the judge with their opinion of how this is, but that doesn't take away from the fact that they still have a right to interpret those documents a certain way that they deem fit. And so I know that you said you're nervous. If you want some help, give our office a call. I'd love to, if we have time. I don't know how quickly the appeal is. You said it's coming up. If you're able to get on my calendar or Myra's calendar or one of us, hopefully we can maybe chat with you before the hearing. We can give you some tips and some advice. If you have any questions about tips or advice today, anything specific, I can try and help you out. But Jasmine, I think you're going to do just fine. As long as you are honest, as long as you stick to the facts, right? Don't be emotional about it. You're not going into this hearing representing, you said you were denied PS. Okay, I don't think you clarified who you're going for. Sorry if you had written another comment. So whether this is your loved one or your child, you're not going into this hearing representing your child or your loved one. You're going into this hearing representing your client, okay? The person you work for, the person you're claiming the IHSS hours for or protect supervision for, that is your client. That is your patient, right? So you have to remember, in this room for the hearing with this judge, if you can separate that, this is not mom and son or mom and daughter. This is mom and client. I'm sorry, this is caregiver and client, caregiver and patient. That should hopefully help sort of kind of allow your brain to go a certain way, if you will, that helps you advocate a certain way. And so that is a tip that I like to give. I don't know how helpful it can be. It helps me when I think about it that way. But let me know your thoughts. Let me know anybody else who's been through the appeal process. If you did get approval, let us know for Jasmine here, maybe what she can expect, some tips that she might need from you. Where's Cheeto? He's right behind me. Somewhere. Oh, he's gone. Oh, he's on the couch. Yeah, he's here. He's being quiet. Wait until someone knocks on the door, though. That fool will go crazy. Hired Advocacy, the workers are so rude. They can be. They can be. But I'm glad you're a client. We love working with you. Jasmine, you said the county workers. Yes. Tanya, I am a live-in provider. I only add 6 hours on days I don't input work hours. So again, that makes sense, right? That I believe is how it's supposed to be. But as we've seen in the comments today, and what I do see in other Facebook groups, people sharing their experience, it does seem as though people will add them on top or sprinkle them in, like we've talked about. But if that is how you do it, I think that's technically the right way. But I don't know if there's a right or wrong way right now when it comes to live-in providers. So thank you for sharing your experience. Let me know anybody else who has experience with this and what you do. I'm very, very curious. All right, Janet, let's see. Can you answer something off topic? How long is too long to hear from regional center? My kiddo with autism had an assessment in March. Called and they said it's still under review. Regional center had already screened him and given him an official diagnosis of autism when he was 4 years old. I had to do another assignment, or I think you meant assessment. So regional center is a little tricky because their deadlines are a little vague. So there's a couple of deadlines, but not like the decision to make a determination. Kind of, sort of. I think that's right. So technically they're under like a 120-day rule when you call and are putting in your application or your referral, as they say, right? But oftentimes we see people go many, many months beyond that. So right now, I'd say the average timeline for regional center is going to be 6 months to a year. That is what we're seeing. And so the regional center is just super, super like, I don't want to say like low staffed, but they are overwhelmed. And so, excuse me, I don't work for regional center. I don't work for the state. I work for Galt Advocacy. So I work for you. But I do empathize, sympathize for people at regional center, these workers, because they are given hundreds of cases at one time. That's theirs. And they're like, here you go, right? And then they're like, okay, well, I need my supervisor for help. And then they look to the supervisor and their supervisor retired or their supervisor quit. And so we're seeing a lot of that right now. And so it is sort of explaining why they're taking forever. So I'd say bear with regional center. I think your question ultimately was, it's under review. I'd already given an official diagnosis. I would just say continue following up. So continue following up. I wouldn't do it every day. Probably wouldn't even do it every week, but I'd say, every couple of weeks, continue following up. And if you get the it's still under review answer, then you at least know that it's still active. It's still active and they're reviewing it. That's a good thing, right? But I would say plan for this to maybe be another few months. It could be. I don't know, but doesn't hurt to continue following up. Great advice about separating feelings. Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you feel that way. I think it is important, regardless of the environment that you're in. And I think this mindset can apply to being in an IEP meeting. It can apply being in front of the doctor. It can apply in front of therapy or regional center, IHSS, all of it. Where, again, this person is not going to be able to. If this person can't advocate for themselves, then they're relying on you to advocate for them. Right? But if you're advocating as a parent, there's going to be certain boundaries you're not going to go past that they may need, I think. And for some cases, it might be the opposite. You might be able to advocate for them better in that mindset of parent, right? But I think for maybe the vast majority, you could practice separating that issue there. You're speaking for your client, not for your loved one, right? And so a lot of people will say this. They'll say something like they're appealing for protective supervision, and they're preparing to go in front of the judge. Or maybe they go in front of the judge. Let's back up. We'll just say they're social worker at their home assessment. And they tell the county that, I love my child, but they have lots of needs. I've done my research. They qualify for protective supervision. It's not about the money, whether they get approved or not. I'm still going to love them. I'm still going to care for them. I'm still going to do everything for them, right? That is probably something you feel as a parent, rightfully so. There's nothing wrong with what I just said if you feel that way. However, you are telling the county that they don't necessarily need protective supervision to remain safe because they have a voluntary person, a parent, to keep them safe. So in that scenario, they could argue that whether protective supervision gets denied or not, they still can live in your home safely without PS because you're working for free. You already stated that, right? And so it is kind of hard because what's the alternative? The alternative is to tell IHSS that you're unsure of what's going to happen. The needs of this person are so intense, you're unsure if you can continue taking care of them, right? If you are a client of the regional center here in California, technically there is a home outside of mom's home, dad's home for you. Mom and dad, if they are unable to care for this individual, regional center can open up a group home for them in a sense, right? There's a lot of red tape around that. But the point is to say that technically, if you have special needs and they're so severe, that person needs to be taken care of. And so if they can't receive that care at home because their needs are so intense, then there are other options. But the state doesn't want to have to pay for that. That's why IHSS exists, because it's cheaper to pay you protective supervision than it is to pay a group home from another bucket of money, tax dollars, right? So again, complex question, not question, but complex topic, I would say. But I'm glad, Brittany, you feel that way. Please let me know if there's any other questions or thoughts you have about that. Janet, you said yes, because he's older. What was your question again? You had the big question, the long one. What was it? Wait, no, you didn't. Oh yeah, your question was about regional center. Oh, sorry, Janet, are you answering somebody else's question, or are you just furthering your point? Let me know. So I can't see sometimes when people are like answering a comment, it just comes up as like another comment sometimes. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Tanya, the judge's questions are very tricky, and the appeal specialist tries to run the show. I highly recommend getting Galt on your side. Thank you for the referral, Tanya. I appreciate it. It is an honor to represent families here at Galt Advocacy. We can never promise an outcome, right? But we can promise that we'd work really hard to try and help you win your case, whatever that might be, especially for something like protective supervision. So the judge's questions, I agree, they can be tricky. They can be tricky. And when you say the appeals specialist runs the show, I want to maybe clarify that for some people who don't know. So when you file an appeal for something like IHSS, protective supervision, whatever the category is, once you file that appeal, your appeal goes to an appeals specialist. That's somebody at the county who works in that state hearings division department. They're kind of the bridge between the county and state hearings. So your appeal is not being worked on by the social worker. The social worker goes on to business. They go on to their next client at the home assessment, right? So once it goes into the appeals realm, your appeal is now in front of the appeals specialist. They're the ones that are going to present the position to the judge if you ever go in front of the judge. The social worker does not go in front of the judge and give their position or their argument. They're not the ones presenting the case to a judge. They will typically be in the hearing to provide testimony, to provide some opinions on some things, but it's the appeals specialist. They're the ones, they're kind of like the county's representation in a way. And so that is the person you have to be prepared to sort of go up against if you're planning on fighting for protective supervision or whatever category you're fighting for. Brittany, have you ever experienced a doctor that will not mark autism diagnosis as permanent? Our doctor marks temporary, and he said we can review it every 2 years. He also does not mark permanent for the diagnosis. It's super frustrating because we are going to head toward the hearing with Galt. Just wondered what your experience has been. Definitely not the first time I've heard this. I will say it's odd because if anybody knows anything about autism, which most doctors do nowadays, that autism is something you're born with, from what we know, right? And it is permanent. And so if you have a doctor who's referring to do that, I would probably look at another option. You can also get diagnoses from a psychologist. You can get diagnoses from psychologist, like a school psychologist. You can even pay, you can go privately. You can pay for a private psychologist or, a specialist in that world to give an assessment or fill out this paperwork for IHSS. But yes, it is something I've seen before. It doesn't happen all the time, but I will say that on occasion we'll meet doctors who, for some reason, won't acknowledge that it's a permanent diagnosis. Now, autism is a spectrum. That's autism 101. We know that autism can be here or it can be here for certain people, right? It can be in the middle too. But one thing we also know for sure is that autism for some people, it can evolve over time. So this spectrum, as they get older, it can go like this as they get older. That's what's really interesting about autism. It's one of those few mental impairments, those processing disorders or condition, however you want to label it, that can change over time. And as long as there is therapeutic interventions and you're working with experts with ABA, regional center, therapists, the school, if you're working with people to help progress this individual, hopefully that spectrum will go this way as they get older, right? And they will hopefully get to a point where maybe they can live in a society where they can function like a neurotypical individual, right? But that's not always the case. And sometimes they can regress as time goes on. And so it's just kind of that tricky part when you are caring for somebody with autism. You're never really going to know what the next year is going to look like. It can evolve. It can change. But as far as the condition itself, to my understanding, now I'm not a doctor, right? So I don't give medical advice here. But from what I understand, autism is a permanent condition. Let me know if anybody agrees or disagrees. Daisy, you said, yes, I've been with your business for a while, quite a while now. It's so important for you to be there at our home visits and make a big difference. That is very nice of you to say, Daisy. I really appreciate that. I will say, excuse me, my goodness. It is always an honor for us, Galt Advocacy here, myself, to represent a family and work with you. I will say something that I don't think maybe advocates say enough. Hiring an advocate or working with an advocate, this is out of pure convenience. So, working with an advocate is not like a special pill that guarantees you to get something like protective supervision. It's also not a necessity, right? You don't have to work with somebody like Galt Advocacy to get protective supervision. And so there are times where we might look at a case and we're like, man, I don't think you need us. Your case is very clear. And we might just give you some tips and advice. And so we, of course, will accept anybody who wants to work with us if we all come to the same conclusion as to, we would benefit, the child or the loved one would benefit from having representation, but not everybody needs representation. And so I do, of course, suggest that you consult with advocates and representation if you're ever considering that because you're having a hard time. I mean, if you're going to go in front of a judge, if you're going to file an appeal, that's usually a different story. I do think that if you have a case that's difficult, or you have to file an appeal because you have to fight for it, it's really tough to represent yourselves in front of these judges these days. And so I definitely would recommend, though, for anybody pursuing IHSS, and protective supervision, before you even apply, I think you should consult with an advocate. It doesn't have to be called advocacy. It can be any expert. It could be anybody in that field who's an expert in IHSS. But I do recommend you at least consult with somebody to get their thoughts and opinions about your situation. That doesn't mean you have to hire that person to help you, but I do think there's some value there. There's some really important information that I can share with somebody before they apply that can really help propel things for them. And so just some 2 cents, just some thoughts there. Thank you, Daisy, for being here. Teresa, my understanding is that IHSS is paying parents because parents are prevented from getting a job because of necessary care. Wouldn't that be a valid reason to give a judge? Absolutely, I would, right? My understanding is that IHSS is paying parents because parents are prevented from getting a job because of necessary care. So that is a part of that separation that we're talking about, right? From that. So Teresa, yes, that is, but you have to also be careful with saying that, right? So because there are regulations that allow you to be a provider in that scenario, right? Or I'm sorry, that used to be that, right? That used to be a part of the criteria to be a provider where you are prevented from working full time, right? But that is also a factor that you put into play when you are pursuing protective supervision. If you can show that the needs of this child or this loved one are so intense, far greater than a typical child in this scenario, that it prevents you from being able to hold down a full-time job, that allows you to tell the judge, you're not sure what you're going to do. It's not necessarily about the money. It's about your livelihood as a caregiver, as a person who has bills, as well as the best interest of the child, this person you're caring for, right? So there's a balance there. But yes, to tap into, on top of everything, also acknowledging that you are unable to work a full-time job and be economically self-sufficient because of the intense needs of a person with special needs, that's absolutely a great point to give to a judge. Thank you, Teresa. Daisy, I'm glad Galt by our side until we get approved, especially when we have those home visits. Yes, and so if you do work with Galt Advocacy, we will, of course, represent you at your home visits. Thank you, Daisy. So if anybody's interested in talking with me, get on my calendar. It's a little booked up right now. You might have to wait a little while, but it would be an honor to chat with you. I'd love to talk. Brittany, I'm waiting for our advocate to talk to Myra about this. Currently looking for a new doctor. Yes, I know that Myra will probably have great advice on this. Oh, Janet has that experience too. She said that this happened to me last year where my doctor went temporary after 3 years of marking it permanent. That was such a strange experience, but I ended up seeing the doctor fill it out. Okay. Yeah, it's weird how some of these doctors will do that. I can't say why, because again, I don't know these doctors personally, but heard some strange things. All right, everybody, we're just about out of time. Brittany is referencing Teresa's comment where she said that's a great point to not be able to work, but would a judge argue that the child could just go to school? So the judge can bring up any argument. So again, you are just breaking the tip of the iceberg right now. So yes, that is the case. But if the child's in school and you still are prevented from working full time because of the needs of the child, then that is furthering your point still, right? And so it's hard to really address this specific topic in a short live stream because there are so many factors that come into play with it. On top of that, the judges are all different. They all have different feelings. They all have different ways that they rule and make rulings, I mean. And so I do think that this is a great point to make, of course. But that school argument, because again, I like where you're going, Brittany, because in order to be an advocate, you got to think like a social worker. You got to think like a county rep. You got to think like a judge. You got to know kind of what they're going to ask ahead of time so that you can have those arguments prepared, right? That's like debate 101. In order to debate something, you got to know how to debate for both sides, right? And that makes you a great debater. And so for IHSS, it's kind of the same thing. When we're working with a family and we're trying to get protective supervision for them, we have to kind of know that the cards that the county has. What are the reasons that they're using to deny? And if we give them these reasons, what are some of the things they're going to say about it? How are they going to rebut that, right? And so I love it. Thank you, Brittany, for being here. Daisy, you said, can the social worker take off hours while my son is at ADT school? What is ADT school? Caleb, can the social worker take off hours while my son's at school? So can the social worker take hours when the child's at school in general? Yes. So there is a column on your notice of action that says services you refused or get from others. And so that does give the county, IHSS, the right to refuse a little bit of time, assuming that the school is doing that task for them. So for example, if you have, 5 hours a week in bowel and bladder care because your child's, in diapers still, they're not potty trained, but they're in school for 6 hours a day, then the social worker has to assume that the school is probably helping them out in the restroom once or twice during the day. So if that's the case, they might reduce the time from 5 hours to 4 hours per week. So they can do things like that, yes, while the child's at school. Brittany said we homeschool. So this is something we'll need to be prepared for. I love it. I love it. I would love to chat with you, Brittany, if you want to connect, because I want to have a thought on this. That's okay. We'll talk about it later. So I got to run. Yeah, Daisy said, you said our social worker says she has to take a few hours, but it wasn't much. Normally it's not. Normally it's not like a huge make or break of the hours in totality. But yes, normally we will see usually minutes, not hours. But if it's spanned over of a bunch of different categories, then it could be maybe a few hours a month. But yes, it can happen. Absolutely. All right, everybody, I got to run. Thank you so much for being here. And stay tuned, 1 o'clock in Spanish, we will have Myra and Myra. I think both Myras are going to be on today on our Spanish stream at 1 o'clock. So in the next 5 to 10 minutes, if you speak Spanish or you know somebody who speaks Spanish that wants to hear about some of this information, point them to our other Galt Advocacy page so that they can hear it in Spanish with Myra, who's going to be joining today. Nicole is out sick today. But thank you, everybody, for being here. And Janet, thank you. Goodbye to you as well. And thank you for all your great comments and questions. Thank you, everybody, for being here and hanging out with me this Friday afternoon for a few minutes. If anything that I said resonated with you and you want to share this with anybody, tag somebody, please do. That's really, really helpful just to get this information out as much as we can to spread, correct information. And a lot of this comes from you guys. Your comments alone are super helpful for people to come across and read. So thank you so much for putting in your 2 cents and your experiences. It was very, very kind of you. Next week's topic, Q&A, I think. My favorite, and Dakota. So Dakota will be joining me. We'll have to verify. Teresa, we got to make sure Dakota's joining me. I haven't chatted with him in a while. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. I hope everybody enjoys their weekend. I hope you all have a wonderful Friday, and we will see you next time. Bye, everybody.